according to the minutes. Nancy, right, 6:30?
Do I have the clerk's package?
Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 as amended as of March 28, 2025, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. This meeting will be recorded by the local scene, formerly known as pac-tv. Members of the public who wish to watch may do so by visiting the Duxbury Government Access Channel, Verizon 39 or Comcast 9. Viewers can visit thelocalscene.media/Duxbury for important information about Duxbury program, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. I will ask you all to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is open forum. This is items that are not on our agenda that we may put on future agendas or announcements that any members of the board may have. I'll start on my right with Cindy.
Nothing.
Nato?
Yes, I have. Actually, I reached out to Chief Reardon, and he called me from California.
Oh.
And so what's he doing in California? So our Fire Chief, Rob Reardon, is attending week 3 of a 4-week staggered in-residence session of the Executive Leaders Program at the Center for Homeland Defense and Security at the Naval Postgraduate School, Monterey, California. This program is attended by 30 senior local, state, tribal, territorial, and federal government, military, and private sector officials. They are chosen from a national applicant pool and reflect the variety of professional backgrounds and geographic areas that comprise the Homeland Security community. Only 15% of statewide applicants successfully join the program. Alongside Rob in his class is the Director of the Joint Staff Nevada National Guard, Chief Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs Section, U.S. Department of Justice, Washington, D.C., Chief Counsel, Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, Arlington, VA, Assistant Chief, United States Capitol Police, Washington, D.C., to name a few. So all costs associated with Rob's participation are covered by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So I can well imagine how proud the members of his fire department are that their leader has been selected to attend this prestigious program, and I think we should all be. So I recognize Rob Reardon for, wow, that's pretty impressive. So I look forward to talking with him when he gets back and finding all about it. It's really cool.
Yes.
That's what I had.
Thanks,
Thank
Fernando.
you.
Mike?
I have nothing, thank you.
I just have a couple of things to share. First is Massachusetts 250. I've mentioned this a couple of times to this board. Just an update. We had a great forum at the Senior Center on Thursday morning. My thanks to Brooke and Tony for setting it up. We had over a dozen and a half participants from across the town, ranging from the schools to the library to a number of Duxbury nonprofits. We had a presentation from a representative of Mass 250 to discuss ideas for showcasing Duxbury's history and drawing visitors to the town between now and the end of 2026. So more to follow on that. Secondly, MBTA communities, as has been my custom, I'm providing an update from what we did last Thursday. So the working group met last Thursday in a marathon 4-hour session. Fernando, you were there for part of it.
That's right.
The bulk of the discussion pertained to the details of the draft zoning bylaw amendment. Public forums of the proposed bylaw were previously scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday, but those will be rescheduled to a future date because the draft bylaw is still in progress and not yet in a form to be discussed and refined. Members of the public have asked a very important question. It's been asked a number of times, and I'd like to share the question and the answer with you. The question has been, why are we doing this after town meeting voted no in November? And the answer, quite simply, is because we have to, but let me share some important points. First, after the vote in November, the state Supreme Court ruled that communities must comply. No community can opt out of compliance, and that's a huge difference from where we were in November. Second, in June, this upcoming June, the question for the special town meeting will not be whether to comply, but how. A no vote just kicks the can and requires us to go back to the drawing board again for a new proposal and yet another vote. Think of the movie Groundhog Day. We'll be doing this over and over again until a proposal is finally approved. Third, many of us feel the very same way that you do. We don't want to have to do this, but we respect the rule of law, and the state Supreme Court has spoken. So we'll comply with the town's legal obligation. To be clear, that obligation is merely to approve a zoning district. It's a paper exercise. There's no requirement for the town or anyone else to actually build anything at all. And further, to make additional dense development as unlikely as possible, we've intentionally selected the most densely developed parcels that already exist in our town. So, why are we doing this again? Because we have to, but we're approaching it in a very careful way so that we achieve legal compliance while minimizing the possibility of additional dense development, and most importantly, protecting the town's eligibility for a variety of valuable state grants. And as we know, grants are even more important than ever, given the town's financial realities. There is a further update regarding MBTA communities that I believe Rainey will be providing regarding litigation. With that, anything from the public for open forum? Yes, ma'am, if you can please state your name and street to the microphone and go ahead.
Elizabeth Shedd, Franklin Street. Kind of segues into what you were just discussing. I had commented earlier about the fact that I am an older adult living in Duxbury who wants to stay here financially, but I also want to stay here safely. And segueing off of what you had just said and comments about the fire chief, and also on discussions that you had last week, I'm thrilled to know that you as a board are stepping up to the plate and, asking more questions, putting to the finance committee, okay, what about the sustainable, what we call the rainy day fund, about funding for those emergency positions. I want to thank you for stepping up and acknowledging the fact that, yes, we do need to keep those positions, especially for those of us as seniors. I talk with a lot of friends, the senior center and various other places, and we're all concerned for our safety too. And we recognize that we have a phenomenal fire and safety. I mean, we really do. Thank you. Thank you for stepping up and asking those questions, even though I know it's tough. Please continue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for being here. Any other comments for open session? Open forum, rather. Okay. New business, we are past 6:35, so we can, actually, before we get to that, the Select Board acceptance of donations from the Doris A. Keller Revocable Trust for the Police Department, Fire Department, and Library. And this is going to be presented by Town Council Sharon Everett from KP Law. Do we have Sharon? Hi, Sharon.
Good evening. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for coming tonight. What would you like to tell us about this donation?
Well, I'm telling, this is to let you know that Doris A. Keller generously left money to the police station, the fire station, and the library, and the gift of $25,000 each to those departments and entities. And you are asked today to accept those donations that have been made to the town, that have been very generously made to the town.
Do we have any representatives of the estate or the family here tonight? We do not. Okay. I'll take a motion, but I would like to read Mrs. Keller's obituary. I didn't really know anything about her. And she was a very long time Duxbury resident, so I'd like to share a little bit.
Yes, please.
Just before we have the motion. So the donee here is Mrs. Doris Keller. She was age 92 when she passed away in September. She was born in Brooklyn, raised in Philadelphia. She graduated from West Philly High School in 1950, and she met her husband, Edward, while he was a student at the University of Pennsylvania. They were married in Boston in November of 1955, lived in Boston, Situate, and England before, most importantly, moving to Duxbury in 1968. Doris and Ed were married for 53 years before he passed in 2008. Doris had many interests. She was a longtime member of the Duxbury Yacht Club, where she enjoyed golf, tennis, and sailing. She also participated in the rowing program at the Duxbury Bay Maritime School for several years. Her hobbies included gardening, painting, reading, and playing bridge. She and her husband left 5 children: Elizabeth, Robert and his wife Kim, Joan and her husband Matthew, Peter, David and his wife Emily, as well as her beloved Labrador, Holly. And she had a number of grandchildren as well. So we thank Doris posthumously for her wonderful donation to the town. And as you pointed out earlier, to a very important police and fire department who provide such terrific services to the town, likewise the library as well. So we thank her and her family most sincerely. With that, do we have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Select Board accept with heartfelt appreciation the Doris A. Keller Revocable Trust's generous donation of $25,000 each to the Duxbury Police Department, Fire Department, and Library, and to authorize the town manager, Rennie Reed, to execute the receipt and release as approved by Town Council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion carries. It's unanimous. Thank you. Sharon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you, Sharon.
Doris.
Good night. Next is public hearing for the aquaculture license renewals. And I believe we have Dick Brennan here as well.
I move that Select Board open the advertised public hearing for review and approval of aquaculture license renewals for Scott Doyle and Brad Doyle.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Yes, Cindy, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael,
All right. We are open.
Hello all.
Mr. Brennan.
Brennan, Myrtle Street, Shellfish Chairperson. The Shellfish Committee, the grants are, I know the town takes the grants seriously, and the committee takes it seriously, and because there's so few of them, we really vet the process. Tonight we have two longtime grant holders who have been doing it for over 30 years. Some of the questions that we ask, sometimes people want to know that it's just rubber stamped, and that's not the truth. We go into detail about it. Location of the lease, size of the lease, description of the lease, which could be, some of the leases are split in half, but they're all no more than 3 acres. They can be geographically split for different reasons, but that's the way they were established, and that's what we're continuing with. We asked them about the number of employees, description of their equipment, their vehicles, the processing float if they have one. And we also talk about how much seed they buy. And the seed can be anywhere from 1 million to 3 million seed, which seems like a lot, but the predation is what gets them. They usually only produce like 25 to 30% of those seeds. So if they plant 3 million, they're lucky if they get 1 million back over the whole year. We asked about where they buy the seed from. They have to make sure that it comes from an approved nursery by state. Then we asked them about the method of aquaculture. We talked also about mortality and what's killing the oysters. It can be seaweed, it can be sea sponges. I just came back from a seminar down the Cape, and they're experiencing something called mud blisters and sponge. The sponges that drill holes. If you ever go on the beach and see old-time clam shells, especially surf clams, and they see all little pinholes, these are from these sponges. Duxbury is not experiencing them, but the Cape has experienced some serious problems with them. I don't know if it's going to come up here or not. We don't know if it's due to water temperature, but we're watching it pretty closely. We also asked them about, because the shore facilities are limited, there's only one place they can unload, and there's competition between them, the Maritime School, and the Yacht Club. There's a lot of traffic going on there. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that these two gentlemen asked that specific question. They said they come at odd times, and it really doesn't jive with like weekend warriors who are using the recreational facilities of the water. We also ask for proof of residency by way of a valid license or a current real estate tax bill. The two gentlemen here tonight, they're brothers. Scott and Brad, sorry. If you'd like to talk to them about their grants, they'd be glad to talk to you. But in the meantime, we did we did all these questions, and the committee voted unanimously to renew the lease. We found that they're in compliance with all the regulations.
Thank you. Would either of the applicants like to address the board? You don't have to, but you're welcome to. Okay. Any questions from the board?
I have none.
I have none. The Shellfish Advisory Committee have done a very thorough job, so I accept their recommendation.
And we also did have a copy of the grant development plans that
Right.
state exactly what you said.
The harbor master and I are trying to get a map of where all the grants are, so we can give, so everybody, we're gonna post it so everybody can see where they are.
Right.
Because they're spread around the bay. Now, like, the bay's only, it's about 6,000 acres, and we only have 90 acres of it, but they seem to be in the way all the time.
You'll see
As soon as I
people,
get that done, you guys will have it.
All right, thank you.
you'll see people swimming out there to grab a treat if you start putting maps up.
Any questions or comments from the public, where this is a public hearing? Hearing none? Okay. How about some motions?
Yes,
These are
I-
10-year grants.
Yes, I move that the Select Board approve the aquaculture license renewal for Scott Doyle, 149 Abrams Hill, for aquaculture license number 0117 for 10 years pending all federal, state, and local reviews and approvals. Roll call vote.
Second. Cindy, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, I.
I move that the Select Board approve the aquaculture license renewal for Brad Doyle, 228 Bay Road for aquaculture license number 9856-8 for 10 years pending all federal, state, and local reviews and approvals. Roll call vote.
Second. Cindy, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, I.
All right.
And then
That's it?
We're going to close the
Yep.
hearing?
I move that the Select Board close the advertised public hearing for the aquaculture license renewals regarding Scott Doyle and Brad Doyle. Roll call vote.
Second. Cindy, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, I.
All right.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
We'll see you in 10 years.
That's right. All right, next is a discussion regarding poll petition for Lincoln Street. Ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our office received a petition from Verizon New England Incorporated and N-Star Electric, doing business as Eversource Energy, who were the petitioners, for the following. Lincoln Street near number 281, and it was to install one jointly owned pole numbered P396S on the southwest side of Lincoln Street at a point approximately 360 feet northeast of the intersection of Congress and approximately 29 feet west of the existing pole P396. This work is being requested by a resident requesting the removal of an existing push brace on private property, requiring a redesign for a support pole in the right-of-way. An administrative hearing on this request was held at 9 o'clock on Wednesday the 2nd in my office, for which notifications were sent to the abutters excuse me, by way of certified mail. In addition, legal notice was published in the Duxbury Clipper on March 19th, 2025, and attached here too you will see a memo to the board from me and the corresponding documentation.
Any questions?
No.
And
I
it,
have none.
Randy, it appears this one, the pole is being moved across the street?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes,
so one for one, we're not adding a pole.
correct.
Just taking an old one and adding a new one, but it's going across the street from where it was. All right. Great. If there are no questions, I will take a motion.
Let me get to right. Where's my clerk's package? Have you got my clerk's package or anyway?
I wouldn't take that from you.
You wouldn't take it? It's okay. Let me just find it. 1 second.
Do you want
Is
a
it
paper?
Lincoln Street? I've got it. Lincoln Street, right? I move that the Select Board authorize the order install one jointly owned pole number P396S on the southwest side of Lincoln Street at a point approximately 360 feet northeast from the intersection of Congress Street and approximately 29 feet west of the existing pole P396, along with the conditions presented by Sheila Skarsky, Director of Public Works, and that Verizon New England Inc. and/or N-Star Electric DBA, Eversource Energy, contact the Duxbury Department of Public Works at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the project.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. It is unanimous. Next one, Mr. Reed.
I thought the Washington Street was pulled, withdrawn by Verizon, that's what it says there, right? Yeah.
Was that gone?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's gone. Yep.
All right.
Now we are on to the finding of uniqueness determination for Duxbury Beach Reservation.
That is correct.
Every year.
Why don't you take us
Still
through that?
unique.
This is an annual activity. So, and my memo reads as follows. As you may recall from the previous years, in accordance with mass procurement law, specifically Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, Section 16E2, a governmental body is required to solicit proposals prior to acquiring by purchase or rental real property or an interest therein from any person at cost exceeding $25,000. Further, the governmental body is required to place an advertisement inviting the submission of proposals in a newspaper with a circulation in the locality sufficient to inform the people of the affected locality pursuant to a number of requisite publication and submittal deadlines as noted by the statute. As noted in the statute. However, a governmental body may shorten or waive the advertising requirement if, quote, in the case of a proposed acquisition, in this case a lease, the governmental body determines in writing that advertising will not benefit the governmental body's interest because of the unique qualities or location of the property needed, end quote. Mass General Law requires that the determination of uniqueness shall, quote, specify the manner in which the property proposed for the acquisition satisfies the unique requirements. The governmental body shall publish the determination and the reasons for the determination, along with the names of the parties having a beneficial interest in the property pursuant to Section 40J of Chapter 7, the location and size of the property, and the proposed purchase price or rental terms in the Central Register not less than 30 days before the governmental body executes a binding agreement to acquire the property, end quote. As such, our office has prepared the following motion for this purpose, which will comply with the statute. Should the board vote the motion as prepared, council will publish the notice in the Central Register for 30 days in accordance with Mass General Law. And I'll be discussing the actual lease itself with the members of the reservation, and we'll bring said document to the Select Board for your consideration at a later date. There's your motion.
All right. And the purpose being there are no other beaches
That's right.
that we can solicit bids from, right? So,
There's only one Duxbury Beach,
right,
and there it is.
exactly. All right. Any questions from the board?
No.
Nope, we do this every year.
We do.
All right, I move the following motion with regard to the proposed lease by the town of Duxbury of land owned by the Duxbury Beach Reservation, Inc., consisting of approximately 66 acres and including any improvements thereon, and located at and described as all the land and interest in the towns of Duxbury and Plymouth called Duxbury Beach, owned by the reservation, south of a line running approximately east to west along the northerly edge of the northerly parking area at the east end of the Powder Point Bridge and north of the entrance to Gurnet/Saquish, subject to continuation of the Massachusetts Audubon Society Migratory Shorebird Refuge at High Pines, and excluding the land at High Pines now or formerly leased to Patrick J. Cudmore. I move that the advertising concerning this lease will not benefit the town's interests because of the unique qualities or location of the property needed by the town. Such land satisfying the town's unique requirements in the following manner. The property is located immediately adjacent to and comprises part of Duxbury Beach and provides access to the beach. Similar access to the beach is not possible from other locations as a result of the local geography and environmental limitations in the area. And the parcel provides much needed parking for and access to the beach for members of the public.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, next. Discussion regarding approval of seasonal parking permit for Duxbury Beach Park 2. Who would like to take us through this proposal?
So again, this is what we, we had a conversation about
Yeah.
this last time, didn't we?
Yeah, and I have no further questions on this. I think this is a standard parking permit that we do. We can certainly discuss this and other things in coming years, but I think for the sake of this year, I have no questions as to the parking. So
Okay.
I'm ready for a motion.
And for the purposes of the public understanding what we're doing here, this is an annual license that we issue for the Blakemans area, that large parking lot that holds approximately exactly, according to this, 1,400 cars. And it's required to get a license from the Select Board every year, and that's what we're doing right now.
I move that Select Board renew the general license for parking issued to Duxbury Beach Park 2 for the year 2025, subject to town inspections, the receipt of all renewal paperwork, and payment of all funds/fees owed to the town of Duxbury.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Fernando. Next, EV charging station activity. Since fees were introduced on December 1st, 2024, Mary will present this. Mary, I know we have Katie St. Clair as well as Dave Collins here with us.
So we've been charging too much, have we?
Nope.
Good.
No. And the answer is no. Although I'm sure there are other folks who would disagree with me, so I'm just going to wait for a second as Nancy pulls up. Can we start with the session count first, Nancy, if that's okay? Yeah, that one. Yes, please.
So when that's coming up, Mary, can you just refresh our memories as to where the chargers are?
Absolutely. So first off, tonight I'm joined here by Katie Sinclair, our Facilities Director, as well as Dave Collins, our Energy Manager, and our Treasurer, Corey Leiden. These folks all play a role in the EV charging stations in terms of the implementation of these stations, the maintenance, as well as the revenue that we are receiving for the electricity that we're providing. So we came before this board a little over 6 months ago, perhaps slightly longer, to present during a fee hearing the proposal to implement fees at our EV charging stations. The town of Duxbury operates 2 locations. One is here at Town Hall, located behind Town Hall. We have 1 unit with 2 ports, so there's 2 charging options here at the Town Hall, and the same as true for the Percy Walker Pool. So those are the 2 locations that we operate these charging stations. And up until about 6 months ago, when we came before you, the town was providing these EV charging stations free of charge to anybody who connected to those charging stations. While we were providing the electricity free of charge, the town was incurring costs associated with these charging stations. We were incurring costs not only for the electricity that was being provided, but also the software that is needed in order to manage these stations for repairs and for revenue generation, for reporting. It's basically their dashboard portal that is provided by the vendor. And in addition to that, we also bear the cost of any repairs and maintenance to these charging stations. So we presented all of this information to the board during a fee hearing, and we also provided a variety of options for fee structures to the board. And where we landed was that the board adopted a fee structure of 47 cents per kilowatt hour plus an $8 idle time fee after a grace period of 15 minutes has expired. When we came before you, the expectation was that we were going to roll out those fees in November. What ended up happening is we delayed it slightly and implemented the fees at the beginning of December because we had signs made up for the units so that the folks who were utilizing those, if they hadn't followed along with our meetings and local information sources, that they at least had an opportunity to see that the upcoming fee structure that was going to be implemented. So we did activate that fee structure the first week of December.
Can I stop you for a sec? So just to reiterate on the fee structure, we didn't pull that out of the air.
We did not.
There was
We spent quite a bit of time
yes, exactly.
doing an analysis and looked at a number of variables. And based on a collective decision of the committee that participated in that process and what we presented to you, that was the fee structure that we implemented. So, as a result, this chart up here is demonstrating for you what has happened to our sessions. And so a session is when an owner, the vehicle owner, utilizes our charging stations and plugs in and establishes a session. You can see that we've had a significant drop-off from the moment that we implemented fees at these charging stations.
Yeah, so, sorry to interrupt. So I used to remember cars parked all day long.
Correct.
At the town hall. And at the school, people were complaining that they couldn't teachers arriving with their cars, there was people already, and they would leave their car all day long there.
Correct.
All
That's-
night.
well, and all night. And so I can see that behaviors have changed as a result.
Behaviors
We
have.
have access, people have access to charging stations.
Behaviors have changed significantly, and so you can see that we have dropped off quite a bit. We knew that there would be a drop-off, but we honestly couldn't envision what that would ultimately look like. But here you have it. You've got 4 months' worth of empirical data to take a look at. So with that being said, Nancy, would you mind flipping over to the other chart for me? Thank you. And I believe you guys have copies
Yes,
of
we
this
do.
in your packet, but for the viewing audience, nope. There we go. All right, so during that 4-month period where we implemented fees, and you just saw the impact on sessions, we've taken a look at what we have generated in revenue versus what we have paid out in expenses, the cost of electricity for those associated charging devices. The first grouping, you can see we've broken it down by pool, town hall, and then total. So with respect to the pool, that is clearly the more popular option. About 62% of the activity or the revenue that's generated is coming from the pool location, and 38% is coming from town hall. But what happens is we generate revenue, and then the vendor that is managing the process, there is a 10% administrative fee. So if you follow along with respect to the revenues for that 4-month period, you can see way over to the far right that the town has generated $1,380.89 in net revenue for the activity that has occurred between December and the end of March. If you look at the lower portion of the chart, you can see the associated expenses with respect to the cost of electricity. You'll note, or I'll draw your attention to the fact that under expenses, we only have in hand invoices so far for the months of December, January, and February. We have not yet received the March invoices. And that becomes important because when you look at the net expenses over to the far right, the cost of electricity has, we have incurred costs of $989.84, which when you look at gross revenues less expenses, the net surplus is $391.05. However, when we need to compare apples to apples, so if we compare 3 months worth of revenue generation versus 3 months worth of expenses, the net surplus is $40.25. So one could argue that we have set the rates exactly where they need to be in order to achieve essentially break even, or one could argue that we've set the rates too low in that we are at $40 a quarter, not generating sufficient reserves to even cover the cost of the software subscription that we need to utilize in order to employ these devices, let alone build up a reserve for the cost of any repairs and maintenance.
Exactly.
So, with that being said, our recommendation for right now is to leave the rates where they are for another quarter, and we will take a look at them against our expenses to determine whether we want to reconsider any adjustment to our rates.
Okay.
Questions?
Do you guys have anything else that you'd like to add?
If you just go to the microphone, not for us, but the folks at home. They can't hear you without the microphone.
Good evening. My name's David Collins, Energy Manager at Duxbury. I agree with Mary. I recommend that we keep the rates where they are at 47 cents. The mass average is 52 cents. I just recommend that, and we can open it up to form in 3 months or 6 months to that and see where we're at.
Okay.
With more data, we'll have more data from ChargePoint in 6 months.
Will the municipal aggregation that we're about to enter into at some point help?
No.
No?
Municipal aggregation applies to residential properties, not to municipal.
Oh, so we won't have the benefit of that. Okay. What is the town's long-term obligation for the units themselves?
We own them.
Okay.
But at some point, if the amount of revenue decreases such that we can't cover our expenses and repair, then we basically shut them down.
We shut them down. That would be the recommendation.
Yep,
Absolutely.
yep. We're not a gas station.
Correct.
No.
But if you've noticed, or maybe you haven't, but in your travels, I have been noticing that there are places, across New England that are starting to convert gas stations into charging stations, and that's what the expectation is to be going forward.
Sure.
And we're not in the business of providing gas. We're not in the business of creating these, right?
Are there any other factors here that, I know we have a small sample size here, but as far as the increased costs of electricity generally, so if you're not charging here and you're charging at home, did we maintain some customers here that we might not have kept if the rates weren't so high this winter?
So we do have data on the drivers who are connecting to these sessions, at least where they're originating from, where their vehicle is, or I should say, when a driver connects to these sessions, they have to have a ChargePoint account. And so they log into their ChargePoint account and activate a session. That ChargePoint data does supply us with where those sessions or those drivers are originating from, whether they're in Duxbury or outside. I was surprised to see the number of folks that are from outside. We do get some folks from out of state, and so we will have, if we come back and reconvene in 3 months, we'll have a little bit more data to do some analytics with respect to that. We don't see individual owner names or plate numbers to identify whether we've lost those folks or not. Our concern more is that we need to cover our costs, especially given the realities that we're facing.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any information about the idle fee, about how much that is being utilized?
It's interesting that you say that. So in this particular case, I have not broken it down, but there was one vehicle that really was an anomaly in the data set, that this one particular vehicle had a single session that was about $125 to connect for that session, and the bulk of it was because of the idle fee. So it was clearly somebody who left their car for 10 hours and got charged the idle fee. Everyone else has, we haven't seen anything to that degree.
We had a very long meeting with an early meeting, and I got, driving an electric car, I got charged $16 to attend the select board meeting last week, so.
Well,
I'm just wondering if that, yeah, really, right?
and that is why we put it in place.
It's, yeah.
We could always take a recess so you can unplug.
Yeah, let's do that next time. Cindy, let's take a recess.
I won't tell you what my gas is, though.
Any further comments, questions?
I have none.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
Mary,
very much.
Corey, thank you. Katie, Dave, thanks. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
Next is a discussion with Rockland Trust representative regarding trust/fund accounts, investment, and management practices, and I suspect we're going to hear that this is a great time to buy.
Perhaps. It's unfortunate that Amy's not here tonight because she was the one who had specifically requested this meeting.
Well, I'm sure she'll watch the meeting.
But hopefully
She's pretty good about that.
she'll be able to watch it. So it is my pleasure to introduce our portfolio manager, Brian Callow from Rockland Trust. He's also joined here by Dave Schiller, our relationship manager. Dave's in the back row. If we need to call upon him, we could certainly do so. And before we get started, I just want to make sure you guys have all received the packet that was distributed late last week for you to take a look at.
Yes.
So you may or may not be aware, but the town has partnered with Rockland Trust for quite some time. The relationship is long and deep. It goes back a couple of decades when John Madden was here as your finance director. The town has enjoyed a very successful relationship with Rockland Trust during this period. Corey, our treasurer collector, is here as well this evening, and Corey and I, as well as a couple of members of Corey's team, meet with Rockland Trust a couple of times a year. We sit down and review our portfolio performance, and we talk about a number of different things that are happening in the market and what's happening with our portfolio. So we work with them very closely throughout the year, but it's my understanding that the select board in years past has received or participated in those presentations, and for a period of time, there was a lull in that expectation. So what we did is we invited Rockland Trust to come back here this evening and join us and give you guys an update on our portfolio and where things stand. Brian is a wealth of information. He can go as deep down a rabbit hole as you want, or we could keep it at a real high level. So,
Can we mention the word tariff, or is that maybe?
I will defer all of that to Brian. So without further ado, I will let Brian take it away.
Thank you very much, Mary. And just to be respectful, any word is fine. I've been called lots of them, and tariff would be maybe one of the nicer ones. Obviously anything is up for grabs, whether it's pertinent to here or just market, what you're thinking about, how that formulates with the town, because you have so many other buckets of money other than just ours. To be respectful of everyone's time and the fact that someone might be getting charged for it as they're parking. And as Mary said, I can filibuster or I can be seconds, however you need. One, if you have an amount of time that you would like me to speak, I can do that. Or if you have certain items that you'd like to have me address, if you want to mention them, because I could speak for a number of minutes, and you could say, well, he didn't address anything I want to talk about. So either of those, I'll start with those two questions.
Yeah, I'd like you to take us through the presentation that we've all read, and members of the board will pepper you with questions along the way.
Great. Yeah, you don't have to wait.
This is very important for us. Our Prop 2.5 override did not move forward.
Yep.
So we, of course, are always careful with every penny, but even more so now,
Yep.
which is why this presentation for us is very important, very helpful. So we look forward to hearing from you. So please proceed.
Great, thank you. And if I don't come up for air at any point, just put your hands up. I'll be able to see for questions at any point. And if you want to get them all at the end, that's any questions at the end is fine as well. So if we just move to page 2, we have a quick agenda of what I was going to cover here. There are probably more market slides than I was going to cover. That's 4 to answer questions, and I can drill through some of those, and I'll take a breath between the portfolio stuff and the market items as well. So to your point, we want to make sure we speak about the accounts that are managed from the town, and because we know they are very important and on focus at different times due to their horizon and when you need contributions to them or withdrawals, right? And then we'll talk about the allocation and the performance of the mass. We're going to talk about the mass legal list a little bit. It's a little different. So I know there's been some questions at certain times about performance of some of the portfolios. We're going to answer a lot of those questions tonight because Massachusetts does have restrictions for different pots or buckets of money. And when
you go through that, that'll be helpful for you to maybe identify what's new to that list, because as we've known from years past, that was kind of a static list for a long time. And then in the last couple of years, it's been expanded. So if you can share info about that, that'd be helpful too.
By all means. Yes, and then the allocation and performance of those. So we'll talk about the legal list and then how that filters into the portfolio, how it drives performance. We'll go into a good bit of that. And then there's the OPEB portfolio behind that. So we'll review it, talk about the discount rate, because there's a lot of, you can always talk about anything with performance, but so much of that is driven by essentially, the first buckets are kind of driven by state statute, and then the other ones are essentially driven by the actuary and how they formulate the plan, or I should say, how they address the numbers that are created by the plan, how they discount them back, and then where they get their return numbers that they access, that they believe the plan should play out. And so we'll go through the performance of the OPEB after that, and then I have market slides to either describe some of those items and also to answer any questions as we go. So flip the next page. We're going to talk about the Mass Legal List. So within Mass General Law, sections, essentially General Law 167, sections 15 A through K, they have created, actually they didn't create, meaning the Department of Revenue, which towns come under. The Division of Banks created a legal list back in, I think it was 83, but certainly back in the 80s, when you think they were trying to rein in banks and credit unions of what they were investing in. Obviously, we had a lot across the country that had some issues, et cetera. So, okay, why don't we create a tight list of what we are comfortable with the banks investing? And the Department of Revenue said, well, if they're doing that with the banks, why don't we do that with municipalities? Because similar in nature, we have buckets, large pools of money that are very important, that we don't need people going in off down bad angles or anything like that to invest them, because that's essentially what happened. A lot of people were doing this banks and interest rates for a long time, and then they said, well, I've read a book, and that started really happening to states, even at the state level with different ones. So they said, okay, let's bring this in, and that's where it's gone. And so there's obviously there's a diversified portfolio, which we're talking about the OPEB at the OPEB level. Right now, it essentially breaks out to fixed income and common stock. On the fixed income side, we can build essentially kind of an intermediate portfolio for the type of assets that we're trying to do. It ends up being stabilization and trust funds, and shorter money is actually, the general funds are kept at very specific rules to keep them inside of a year, and the only thing that can go outside of a year, inside of a year, is really treasuries. Agencies outside of that is just CDs. So it's a really tight list, keeps the cash in place. The next is when you think of like stabilization funds or CPAs, healthcare trusts, et cetera, then you step out and say, okay, it's essentially a reserve or a stabilization account to be there for when we need them, they need this money. So on the bond side, you can buy U.S. Treasuries, as it says, U.S. agencies. You can buy municipalities because of the taxable nature of municipals or what they're geared to, taxable investors. You get the shelter, and so the yields tend to be lower. Therefore, for a tax-exempt entity, as a municipality is, we tend not to buy them. There are times of dislocation in the market. And I think of that, the two that stand out is 2008, and then again in March of 2020, where when the world runs to U.S. Treasuries, you can almost, this protracts enough, you could almost see it again, but essentially when the world runs to Treasuries, yields of other securities stay a little, because if you think about it, it is literally the whole world buying U.S. Treasuries. It's affluent investors in Massachusetts or across the nation that are buying municipalities. So at that point, you can buy more yield. So we will at times. And then there's a tight list of corporate bonds you can purchase. So we can buy corporate bonds, put them in the portfolio. To your point about new items, they essentially added a small list of ETFs, all government securities. So essentially TIPS or Treasury inflation protected securities, government mortgages, and some floating rate government as well, that you can buy and diversify your portfolio on the fixed income a little. So where we're allowed to, now that we have that, we'll diversify the fixed side. And you can, as I said, you can build a pretty good intermediate portfolio. You step to the equity side, and as it states there are 22 names on the legal list of investments that you can purchase. And then one part about it, we'll go into the factors whether it's good or not. Last year it was people thought it was poor. This year we thought it was, people might think it's great when they start seeing the numbers. Essentially, almost a third of the securities, or 7 of the names, are in consumer staples. So you've got Procter & Gamble, you've got Coca-Cola, you've got Kimberly-Clark, so you've got Unilever, which is the only international company, which is essentially Procter & Gamble of Western Europe. So you've got a lot of soap, you got a lot of shampoo, you got razors, you got granola bars and things like that. So, and soda. So if you think of how that's working, that's pretty good when things are stable, and they're large companies that give dividends or more on the kind of the value side. You've got healthcare companies, there's another 6 of those, and then you've got 2 utility companies on it. So if you add them together, essentially 68% of the portfolio is what we would call defensive not defense companies, but defensive in nature, meaning when things go bump in the night, this is kind of the portfolio you want. To the other side of that, though, when you want all tech or AI, which we wanted in 23 and 24, Hewlett-Packard essentially is the competition for Microsoft and NVIDIA and Apple. And then you've got McDonald's is the only consumer discretionary name that's going against Tesla and Amazon. And then you have nothing in the essentially the communication space, which is really tech, but it's Google and Meta. So we need to go talk about those Meg 7, which we were talking magnificent, and now they call them Maleficent, but there's only got a lot of names as we've gone. Those just don't appear. The only stock that's been a real driver or been in the top 10 in any couple of years is Eli Lilly, for obviously the drug that was out in the marketplace. So it's a much more, as I said, value, dividend-paying type portfolio. They have added some language just to look at the banks, because there are 2 finance companies on there. In talking to the list, or the people, the holders of the list, they essentially say where there's names, that's what you adhere to. And also within that, they have restrictions that make it difficult to buy any of the other banks or insurance companies as well. So they've kept it pretty much on tight to be fully compliant. And we want to make the town to be in compliance at all times. They used to have more language you could read through and say, oh, if it was mass domiciled, it was great. And auditors didn't think that way, and they called you on it. So we want to make sure we're on the letter of the law. So and to show it, that equity piece, graphically on the next page, you can kind of really see where you have and where you have not, depending on how the economy is moving. The blue bars are just the S&P 500. The orange are the mass legal list. So right through the top, there's no real estate, there's no materials, there's no energy, and there's no communications. That's what's hard about when you analyze sectors, because that was really it was essentially telecom, and they wanted to fill the space to make the sector large. So they changed it around. You can see that tech is, as I already pointed out, I've already pointed really all those out, but you don't have we're shy on tech, and we're high on consumer staples, utilities, and healthcare, which makes for, as I said, in COVID, you're a little more challenged when technology and connectivity was everything. And Bitcoin run up, or I should say cryptocurrency run up of 21, and then the last AI. 22, when the market rolled over, and I'll show you that in a little bit, you really wanted to be in the legal list. And then this year right now has been interesting as well.
Brian, in utilities,
Yep.
what does that comprise? Utilities, and what's the biggest share in utilities there?
Yeah, so it's essentially just 2 names when you get Con Ed and Southern you can invest in.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which aren't Massachusetts based. It's got nothing. You know, I mean, that's some of the stuff when you think about, okay, how they build this list. Yeah, neither of those utilities do any work here.
Right. And
so how's a utility that does the Panhandle of Florida, Alabama, and Georgia become on the mass legal list? I wasn't there when they built it, but I've invested a lot of money to it.
And in the industrials, what names do we have in there?
Yeah, so the industrials you have a little more because you got Rockwell, and you can essentially, and then GE's in there as well. So you have your behemoths. You can be well. I should say that GE was very welcome at some time, and then more recently, but there was about 5 to a decade that people didn't really want it in there.
Brian, you're talking to a former executive from BP.
Ah, okay. So sorry I don't have any energy in there on the corporate side.
I'm glad you don't have any BP anyway. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So obviously on the sector part, you're a little bit limited. And then how we build the portfolios out is on the next page, page 5, and we put them in here essentially right in a row. This is the healthcare trust. This is an allocation that's 70% fixed income and 30% stock. Essentially saying, if you think about how things are, 100% of anything can be more risky than having a portion of something, especially when it's the legal list stocks that we have, and the nature of it being a reserve. And we essentially say that anytime your funds, whether it's healthcare trust or stabilization or anything, those funds like that are as good as whether it's your last snowstorm for the season or 1% change in your healthcare pieces and they can wipe you out, should be in the bank. When you start creating a reserve to show S&P and Moody's that each time they come in that we want our AAA, we're going to hang on or we're going to grow funds. We're continuously putting money in these reserves to grow them. We realize that for some funds like a stabilization, some comes out, more goes in. We want to build it. We want to make sure we get the ratios of our budget in there, and they can come and check it off. They realize that if you do go down a little bit on these type of funds, that they're long-term in nature, and they know that you're growing them because they can do the calculations of what the long-term expected return will be. So the first one's the allocation. This is a conservative portfolio. We call it the sleep at night portfolio because I don't think it ever had a negative year until a portion of 2008. And then by like 3 months in at 09, it was already back. So it comes back pretty quickly. And that's fully diversified stock. If you have the legal list stocks, you're very rarely do you go that negative for that long. So it's pretty good, pretty strong portfolio. And then where we have the next portfolio is a mixture of, we have some stabilization and trust funds in. Trust funds are about 2/3 of these. And if you think of those, yes, they're longer almost than they're to perpetuity, hopefully all the trust funds or many of them. So we want to make sure we have a mix of stock in there and some bond, and they're going to pay some out. So that's why we don't have too much, because sometimes we're like, oh, if this is to perpetuity, why aren't I even more aggressive than my like my OPEB? Well, the OPEB doesn't have money coming out for a long time. This one, will, and they have payments. And then the stabilization funds, we obviously want to be here ready for the town to need it as needed. I started to use the word twice in one sentence, but we want it to be ready and available. So these funds are more of a half and half mix, 55-45. Again, those legalistic conservative stock portfolio, along with the fixed income portion that, and we can talk about the whole rate side, but when the stock market goes down, the bonds rise, and we can certainly, they move pretty well or in opposite directions. They have some negative correlation there. That's the allocations. Questions, we'll go to the performance. It's kind of the driver of what people probably want to see. So for this legal issue, you'd be, I don't want to say amazed, but hopefully you'll be excited when you see the numbers of how they do time. Even though you have a limited, if you're diversified and you don't panic and you rebalance instead, you can do pretty well. So these portfolios, you can see the first one is the balance, and the lower one, just for those at home, is the more conservative, thus the lower long-term numbers throughout. Through last year, it was a very good absolute year. It's still good. It still showed here. That's a strong return for it. And then you start going longer, and so for 10 years, and really since inception here, from 05 to 1, and the other one came on later at 10. To be 50-50, that's essentially almost in line, with how bond and stock, when you can fully diversify. So legalists hold up 6 handles, almost 7 for 10 years, over 6.5 for the duration, and then same thing on the more conservative portfolio. It was hard for a lot of years. We had the absence of rates. We had interest rates. They took them down during 08, and they didn't really return them to us, and then they returned them in one wave, right? Something you guys don't hear. You have a little more of a harbor here, so you don't get to see that come in on as far as waterfronts. But those seawall towns, know the wave when I talk about it sometimes, and they did 5% in 2022. And now we're starting to get a good return on the fixed income side. The equity side has been contributing throughout too. So you can see more of a 4 handle for a conservative portfolio, which is good on an absolute basis. And again, you're doing it with a mass legalist, so it's pretty restrictive. I think overall, the town has been good stewards with their funds by making sure they match the use or the horizon of their funds with what they're allowed to put in.
Brian, when you say 6 handle and 4 handle, you're talking about the first number.
Yes, I apologize. Yeah, but I'll try to slide as little jogging as possible. That's one I still don't get out of my head from the institutional days. But yes, the first number, because if it has the same first digit, both funds for the 10 and the inception, both 6s on the top, both 4s on the bottom. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Questions on that? And what I was going to show on the next page.
Any questions from the board on this? Because this is
Yes.
Yeah,
this is kind of the meat of.
Yep.
Going okay.
But that's
But it's, like
That's
you said,
excellent.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
For the limitation in that fund, it's pretty good performance, I would say, right? That's not bad numbers.
for what we need it for.
Yeah.
To grow
Right.
safely, smartly, consistently.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, because our healthcare is in there. Well, most of the healthcare is in there, right?
Exactly.
So that's a big deal.
It needs to be accessible, and since 2010, just under 5%.
Yep. And this is just to show, sorry, to put one more page in, I probably could have been, okay, since everybody was kind of happy with it, I probably shouldn't have, but I did want to show how, I know, when you get the applause, leave, right? No,
No, but I mean, the fund is restricted, right? So you're
Yes.
working with what you have available, and it's been okay for the limitations, right?
And this
You don't
is
have
how-
any fun stuff in there.
Nope, and this
No
is what
funds.
this page shows right here, the bond side, right, all the way through, and it's not highlighted or anything. You're essentially beating the intermediate bond market throughout. So we're able to do that, reproduce it on a regular and recurring basis, essentially just beat the bond market. On the stock market, you do it on different years. So I just kind of point out in 2022, when the stock market, we thought there was going to be, that we believed there was going to be a recession, they were pointing towards that. And so the stock markets went down. You can see that the S&P ended up at 18.11 down for the year. The Mass Legal List was one of the few places that was positive for the year. That and his energy funds, because energy had a great year that year. But you want to be all energy fund. But essentially energy, this and maybe some of the cryptocurrencies were the only thing at that portion. But certainly that was a massive outperformance. And it was good because it was a year when we learned that as much as bonds are great diversifiers for stocks, stocks aren't always great diversifiers for bonds. Because Fed moved rates up 5%, we knew that they were going to be down. Just a lot regular math. Sorry for people at home, but my teeter-totter, but that's exactly where the interest rates are. Interest rate goes up, bond prices go down. Just the law of the math. And so the bonds did, if you see above, they went down, but the stocks, the Mass Legal List stocks, were there to buffer it. So it was one of those times when the bump in the night really helped municipal portfolios that were restricted to the list. And the stocks in the next year, when things took off, they didn't have any AI there to help. And so you net the years, you end up, if you don't go down as far, you don't have to go up as high. So you ended up in the same spot, but you got there very different ways.
Yep.
I just want to point that. And so, then, yeah, do we bring any questions? If not, it's just
I have
go to the OPEB.
one question,
Yes.
unless you're going to address it later. Are you going to talk about how inflation affects the returns that we've seen in some of these numbers?
Yeah, well, and this was a great time as any to talk about it, because if you think of inflation, everything that a trust fund gives out, scholarships, et cetera, everything in school costs that much more per year. Healthcare, and you think of those two places, those are not inflationary rates. Those are rates much different, right? Which it's hard to keep up with. On top of that, everything that we buy goes up that much. So that's another, when I say good stewards of your funds, all of you here, putting your funds invested as opposed to saying, let's get, and nothing on banks, I work for one, but like, or if we just got a bank rate with long-term money, you're essentially making more of the inflation rate. By doing the bond stock mix, you're saying, okay, we can meet any needs we need operationally from these funds, and we can grow ahead with inflation because we know that this is going to cost us 3% next year and next year, or average to 3% or 2% through time. And that's why the funds are allocated like they are.
Okay. And to be more precise, though, when we're talking about the returns we see, and if we can go back, Nancy, maybe two slides, is it? It was there you go, that one. So when we say total return since inception on the top line,
Yep.
6.59, ignoring the asterisk for the moment, that's what the fund earned over that period of time with assuming the reinvestment of the dividends. But then our net earning would be, you'd have to subtract whatever the inflation rate was during that time, right? So we can appreciate what the actual earnings were, like what's our dollar worth then versus now, and how much we've actually earned. I'm not disparaging that. I'm saying that I think these are still decent numbers, but I just want us to have an appreciation for the fact that we didn't necessarily earn 6%.
No, it's understandable.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a good study. We don't apply an inflation rate to it. We'll look at on OPEB, when the actuary will apply a long-term expected return and a long-term inflation rate. For these, we don't do as much. If you think of inflation coming out of 08, it was all but negative.
Yes.
For core durable assets, and so durable goods. Sorry, and then after, and obviously since 2022, or I should say during COVID, given the amount that we put out, we had to chase it back. So yeah, it has been going more at 3, where the long term had always been 2. That was always the target where the Fed wanted to get to. Now they're saying, okay, we'd be okay with 3, which is,
Okay.
which puts a tougher part on portfolios.
Yep.
Because then, rates have been lower where they have been historically. Now that we've had a nice 15-year run up in the stock market, actuaries, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit, that's what I'm before running, are expecting the large long-term stock returns a little lower. So that we'll see about that 2 to 3 and how they manage that. And obviously it's being managed interestingly as we watch the markets each day right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I have a
thanks for the
question.
question.
And this is not my area of expertise by any means, but what is the concerns for our portfolios now as we're looking at the stock markets decreasing, tanking, whatever you want to say, and the tariffs and the uncertainty that's happening in the stock market? What is the effect of that on Duxbury's holdings?
Yeah, it's a good question, and this is why, as much as, and I'll split the assets up a little, the mass legal list assets that we just talked about, how those behave, essentially end up being as I kind of laid out in those last pages, when the market really runs, the last 2 years, the returns of this portfolio, the equity returns have been challenged. And I would say year to date, essentially through Friday, the stock market has been down 1577, or the S&P 500. Your mass legalist stocks have been down about 5.09. So they've held up really well. And so I'm looking at the healthcare, actually the more aggressive account with the stabilization trust funds, so essentially since the height of the market or the end of January, is positive 2.57.
But
And then
since the beginning of April or since last Friday,
Well, that includes everything through Friday, from the height of the market, which kind of going into January is really in the middle of February, but to have a starting point. Or you say, okay, how are we doing year to date? As I said, the stock market, year to date is down 1342. Your stocks are down 2, the legalist stocks, and the portfolio overall is positive 3.11. So positive in a very negative market because of all the things we just talked about, that the stocks are saying, this is the definition of bump in the night. There's been a bunch of them in a row, and so they're performing well. And think of it, it's more value type companies, dividend paying, large, high quality ones. So they hang a little better versus, and they have a lot of, that's another pie you have to really take in account. They have a lot of U.S. centric buyers. It's not as much tech that shifts 56% of their revenue internationally, that have to worry more about the tariffs, the T word.
although I assume that the consumer staples that we have, there's probably a fair amount of international goods there.
There are. Procter puts a whole lot into Western Europe, so they certainly have to think about it. When there's been flare-ups over time before, that we certainly have seen in these stocks, but the largest ones in the stock market have been more impacted. And a lot of the big staples have their factories in those countries as well. So we don't have, so they're being made essentially domestically in those. And that was kind of the whole reason for Procter & Gamble and Gillette back in the day, right? One had the inroads into all the emerging markets, and the other one had the product. So why don't we put our product on their distribution lines? And that drove that merger. So certainly those type of things, they try to have more of them there, so it's not quite as impactful. But this is across the board. If they keep them all in place, we'll have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and just a concern, about our health, our
Right, the health trust fund,
our
yeah.
health trust fund, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay,
Yeah. So and the good news, if it helps, with a lot of these funds, you've gone through 2008 with it, you've gone through 2022 with it, and you will be well on the other side of this. Right now, if this is halfway through, you're doing great. If we're the first step in, well, then we have to survive more for the
it's
stock
like 2
market.
days, isn't it?
But to that point, and we talk about it more with the market had one of the biggest swings it's had intraday because of it started down at 4% at certain parts, and as soon as the White House put out a line that said, hey, we might revisit some of these tariffs, the market broke even within, what, an hour? So it's really hanging on each word of, hey, are they in these tariffs all the way through, or are we going to come on enough?
Right. But the key is, right now, it's a paper loss. Don't sell.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
know.
Don't sell.
Don't retire this week.
Don't retire this year.
I
Exactly.
already retired.
Well, you're ready, so.
Anyhow,
Anyhow.
that's neither here nor there.
That's all right. Go right ahead. I think we were on slide 8.
Yes, yes, we turn into 9 now, which is the allocation for the OPEB trust.
Yeah.
And when we think of these portfolios, we're leaving where we were as cash reserves, and we're now building a portfolio that's similar to pension assets. Essentially, it is pensions, whether you want to say cousin, stepchild, in-law, or however you want to put it. It's the healthcare benefits, different, some legal parts about it, but overall it's what it's doing. Not only that, whereas pension should be a lot further along, this is more of your 401k a few years into working. So you're putting money in, you want to be fairly aggressive because you realize there's only 2 ways to fund this, with capital growth or with asking townspeople for more money. So we want to make sure we have a lot more equity in here than we would ever put in your healthcare trust. We want to diversify it the best we can for any market that comes. And at the same time, we know that we have to have enough equity exposure that during these markets, it's going to be more impactful, but in better markets, it's going to do a lot better. We don't build our portfolios that way. We don't want to be ahead of essentially the Mag 7. We're not trying to double down on those. We want to make sure we have representation, but we're not trying to be a higher beta play than those. We want to make sure that you get to the same spot with a little bit less of the ride, and that's the goal for this portfolio, and it has portrayed those characteristics as we've gone through. So it's essentially a 75-25 stock to bond portfolio, similar to pension funds across the globe, et cetera, or certainly across the nation. What drives this is on the next page. Or we'll drive it in time. The times is this plan's frame, because essentially what happens is every 2 years the actuary comes in, does a full analysis, and then they'll do a touch-up each year to say how's the plan doing, what's the contributions, what are the expected returns, what have the returns been, and and then we calculate a liability. The issue with that is you've got this one discount number and this discount rate number. And this number will make the liability swing wildly, which sometimes year to year when we come in, we say, wow, that was a tough year, or depending on how they either give you the discount rate or essentially the expected return, that can drive it as well. So a lot of times you tell entities to start these, and they're like, well, look at how much liability I have. Why am I even doing this? And say, well, because it's going to build in your favor as we go. A lot of it, and this is what this town has done really well, is just make sure they have all the structure there. So when Moody's and S&P come in and say, we have everything we need. And they say, oh, great, you have everything. You have your funding plan in place. You know how you're getting the most out of this. How you're trying to get future dollars in. That you have your allocation in line and you got your paperwork line to set up. And that's been a great job for the town as well. This goes to the prudent investor, so we can invest, essentially anything for a prudent investor. We're not the same thing. We're not going crazy as we kind of alluded to for fund portfolios. We're not doing anything like that. As a matter of fact, as I just described it, we want to make sure we smooth the ride as opposed to take it all on the chin. When you flip the page, you see how this is just kind of showing how the discount rate can really drive things. And the important numbers, right, essentially here are and I apologize, but from the last page, really that the 20-year municipal bond rate and the long-term expected return is how they create your discount rate. Where you have assets that can offset your liability, you get the expected rate of return for your portfolio when they take that asset mix of bond and stock. Where you don't, you get your discount rate. So when we're on this page, and per our last actuary report, we're about 12% funded. Portfolio's done great since then. They don't let me in on the cost side too often, but because they don't want me calculating the healthcare inflation rates. But overall, they're giving you essentially, if I just said those two numbers, 665 and 421, your discount rate is 637. So the town, because they've done such a great job on all those other pieces, and they have the funding schedule in place that they can, the actuary can see it happening, essentially give you one almost equal with your discount rate, with your long-term expected return. And so you can see the net liability of $45,658,256 next to it. And then what I will show you is, so they say 1% change in expected rate of return, or your discount rate, essentially your discount rate. You can see how much it moves. It goes all the way down. You go 39,500,000, or in that range. So it can move 10 to 15% with one movement in your discount rate. And that's important to remember, because where I have an issue, and it's probably longer for the Q&A section, is that 657 they have, or that 665, apologize, that long-term expected return, I think is a little low when you're thinking of something that's 5 decades out. Because and the good part about your actuary is they take a third-party analysis, and they're using that long-term expected return. They're not using, it's not your actuary making it up, and they're not saying, hey, someone else just make it up. It's third-party, well-known, Wall Street, I think they essentially use State Street. Some people use J.P. Morgan's. And I have more issues with how they create the side, which I better not say on the microphone. But overall, the key part here is when you look at those numbers I just mentioned, and then the 737, and then we flip the page. So I won't have a dance or make a noise, either my head down or up for short-term returns. But you can see, essentially, it's a Duxbury OPEB. You can see the value you have right there. It's $6,596,915 as of essentially 3/31, the last period we have. And you can see the returns across it. If I go to the far right-hand side towards the microphone, you can see that both your long-term return and your inception return are ahead of if you get 1 more % higher, and a full percent essentially higher than their expected rate of return. So now you know my frustrations with the actuaries, but I also have patience when we just talk about it each time, and they say that's the beauty of them coming every 2 years. Time's your friend. They're going to continue to come in, and you're going to get recognized for everything that the town's done of being good stewards, again, to repeat it, for doing that, and that discount rate will go up, and then the liability will go down that way. That helps it, because those are dollars that you don't have to get a return from or ask taxpayers from. So that's naturally going to come. And that's kind of the extent of the big push for the OPEB part, is that you've done everything in place. Now we just got to let it continue to do it. And I know why they create the long-term returns a little lower now, but that's a soapbox for potentially another day.
Okay.
And then I have market slides in there to describe any questions you might have. I spoke
We
for
don't
quite
want to
a
look
bit.
at the market slides.
Exactly. I believe he could probably tell you any of them on it, but anything in the markets that are making you nervous, the assets, anything you want, I'm happy now to speak about, or just follow-up questions as well later on. It's your time.
Mary or Corey or Jeannie, is there anything I'd like to add to the presentation, or things that you would like to ask on our behalf?
No, like I said, we meet with Brian and the team on a regular basis, so we go through this material every time we sit and meet with them. It'll be, I suspect we'll be meeting in about 3 or 4 months and try to see, what the impact has been of the volatility that we're all experiencing right now. But that's the beauty and the value. I should probably have that on, sorry. But that's the beauty and the value of us partnering with Rockland Trust, because we have people who are experts at this and do this for a living, and they are able to manage our portfolio to react and respond to these market conditions. And so, no, we've gone through all of our list of questions. I think, Brian, I can appreciate your frustration with the lower discount rate with OPEB, but I will say that our actuary is very conservative when it comes to looking at our valuation for OPEB.
Yep.
You guys work so hard to generate that return that you'd like to see that utilized in some of our valuations, but we're always going to take a conservative approach. But no, I'm good. I don't know if Corey, if you have anything else that you'd like to specifically have Brian address.
To that point, sorry.
Remind me, how much we put in OPEB every year?
So the town has a financial framework that at present, they attempt to put $300,000 annually into OPEB. But we've talked numerous times that once we get to that fully fully funded date for our pension obligation,
Yep.
which right now is at 2031, we will then increase that appropriation from 300,000 to a much larger number, because we'll see that pension assessment drop off significantly.
So we'll be able to put more in.
We'll be able to put more in, and have the market work for us. And as Brian has,
Yep.
has clearly articulated, this is, a long-term investment.
And I was, giving the actuary a little hard time about their long-term number. Mary allows us to, and that helps a lot. We actually will have regular contact with the actuary and talk about things, because when this process across the state started, we used to have these like circuitous conversations, because no one would move their discount rate because the actuary said it was fine, and the investment manager said no, and then we started speaking to it. And now, if you have your trusted advisors speak to each other, then we can help out a lot more.
How does the town compensate Rockland Trust for the services?
So their fee is based on a tiered structure of basis points on the overall portfolio. So, and that's actually in your handout.
Yeah, I'm trying
It's
to
on
think of
the
this.
second
It's in this
page.
one. I think it's equivalent to 31 basis points.
Yep. Oh, did we take it out of here?
Yeah,
I
it's not
didn't
on
see
for this
it.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's about 31 basis points. So there's a higher tier for the first 500,000, then it
Yep.
drops down to the second 500,000. Everything else is at 31 basis points.
Okay. And for anybody who may be watching and curious how to understand that number, could you compare that to how somebody pays for a mutual fund, for example, and there's the fee that everybody's going to pay? Is that comparable for folks to understand?
Well, yeah, if you hire anyone to manage or have a mutual fund, et cetera, and then the fee range can be everything from a government ETF that's going to be single digits or something, if you have just that, to an emerging markets one that could be 1.5% or something, right? So anywhere in between that. So it's 0.31% we charge for the portfolio.
Yeah, and some mutual funds are 0.5%.
Yeah, and most
or
of the
more.
pension, like a lot of the pension funds, et cetera, that you see out there are usually right around 0.5%. So we come into those, and the returns are in line with any pension funds you have across the nation. So,
And the value of the portfolio that we're talking about at the end of February was $35 million.
Okay,
yeah.
great. Any questions from the board?
Oh, very thorough, thank you.
This is very helpful.
Well, thank you for
Thank
your
you,
time.
Brian.
And anytime you need to have me in, I usually say, when it's really good and really nice out there, take the bow and the curtsy yourselves. And when it's a little difficult, feel free to bring me in front of the camera.
Yeah, we picked a tough day to have you in,
Yeah.
I understand.
Fake
but-
face for radio, but I'm happy to go on TV for you. Thank you very much for
Thank
having
you,
us.
thank you,
Thank you
Mary.
very
and
much.
Thank you, Dave, as well, yeah. Okay, great. All right, next we have, the Select Board is to ratify
Yes.
water and sewer rate fee increases approved by the Water and Sewer Commissioners. So we are the Water and Sewer Commissioners, and we're referring to ourselves as the Select Board, the water and sewer rate fee increases that we recently approved. This board has not had to consider increases for 15 years or so,
16.
okay? So that's why this appears to be new, and that's why it's before us.
New for all of us.
So who would like to take us through this, Rainey?
Let's see. It has been confirmed with Jeff Blake, Town Council from KP Law, that the Select Board needs to ratify the new water and sewer rates as approved by the Water and Sewer Commissioners on March 24th,
Right.
25. And you have a suggested motion before you.
Okay.
Should we go ahead and?
We already discussed it and
Yep.
voted it as the Board of Water and Sewer
That's
Commissioners.
right,
so
and we're the same people.
unless
so-
we're going to argue with ourselves.
Exactly.
All right.
Those water and sewer commissioners, sorry. I move that the Select Board accept and ratify effective as of April 1st, 2025, the following. 1, transition to quarterly billing. 2, water rates as shown in Table 11 on page 33 of the final report, and sewer rates as shown on Table 15 on page 38 of the final report, as accepted and approved by the Water and Sewer Commissioners on March 24, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to note, I did vote against this as a Water and Sewer Commissioner, but I will support this since the board voted in favor of increasing the rate.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We acknowledge that comment, Mike. Thank you. Next are our select board goals. We've looked at these a couple of times. Nancy and I put them into a form. We were trying to keep it on one page, dual column. We submitted it by Word, so it's one of the Word documents in your file. We ended up, after the last couple of sessions, with about a dozen or more individual goals in an effort to categorize and maybe narrow down the total list. We put them into the 5 buckets that you see before you: the budget, planning and zoning, public health, beach and recreation, governance, administration. And within there, and this was my proposal, is because we have multiple goals in pretty much all of these, that we consider either trimming from any one of these categories or leaving them all in, but having some flexibility as to which ones we accomplish during the year, depending on what resources are available. So, for example, number 1, fiscal 27 budget, we have 3 goals, all of which I think we've, as a group, decided must be completed. But with planning and zoning, for instance, you'll see 4 goals, and my suggestion there, open to debate, of course, is that we either remove one or allow the town manager to focus on 3, whichever 3 of the 4 are most within his wheelhouse to get done.
Right. Can we, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I just, I think that, it's not really, I mean, it is a select board goal to hire a full-time planning director, but it's not really our, it's not something that we're going to take on during, meeting time or whatever. I mean, it seems more something that's going to be coming from
Town manager.
town manager's office and the town manager than from us.
Mhm.
Not that we won't be involved, but, yeah.
Okay. Although to that point, if I can just add, I know that we as a board, we as individual members of the board have called for bringing a director on board. I don't think anybody expected it would take this long, including the manager himself. And there are boards and committees in town that are having a really difficult time getting their work done.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the absence of a director. So I think that's why it rose to the level of a goal from this board. But I agree with you, Cindy.
Yeah, and we've done, with, Jeannie and whatever, with the compensation plan, we've accomplished, at least the salary qualifications, which would help. And
Right.
Can I offer, let me see here. I think A is under the fiscal year 2027 budget. I think 1A is wide, is can we say open enough, right? So there's a couple of things I think we need to look at in that 1A and just make sure that's covered in it, right? So I think 1A definitely actually includes 2C, discussions with the planning board regarding amending the zoning bylaw to increase our commercial tax base. I think our one thing we need to do in the fiscal year 27 budget and thereafter is enter in a conversation with the community on both sides of the fiscal equation, where our revenues are coming from, but also just as importantly where our expenditures are coming from. As a select board, we are required to provide public safety, fire, police, and DPW, and schools. Everything else is kind of up for discussion. It should be up for discussion, especially since it's quite clear that the residents don't want to pay any more taxes, right? And quite rightly so. They're frustrated. But the taxes go towards funding our recreation, go towards funding the swimming pool, go towards funding the beach reservation lease and everything else that goes with it. Yes, we do get some revenues, but I think we're running at a deficit of a couple $100,000, but we need to look at it. The library is also optional, if you want to look at it, right? Counseling on Aging does wonderful things for the community, for the senior community. But again, we're entering a point now where the community has said, no, we don't want an override. We ended up with having to cut services. We're now understanding that impact. So I think we do need to, as a community, get together and decide what we want to do as a community. And so I think, you know, I don't know if that's covered within 1A, but that's what I think needs to be. We need to, as a select board, own the process, and I've been having conversations with Rennie about that, but also we need to do some strategic planning. Maybe a better word going forward is how do we address this structural deficit? Because an override didn't work. Do we go again? Or do we basically, as a town, like I said, start discussing both sides of that, the revenue that comes in, where do we get it from? Do we start changing our zoning bylaws? And then our expenditures, we need to have that conversation. So I don't know if that's covered well enough in 1A, but that is a big subject, a big topic that we need to get into as a select board.
Yes,
Go ahead, Cindy.
Good question for Fernando.
Yeah.
Are you talking about a conversation sooner or something that you're talking about for the fiscal year 27?
I think we need to get into it. It's all interrelated, right? Are we going to go for another override? What does that override look like?
For fiscal year 27?
For fiscal year 27, right? But well, if we we need to go and have a conversation around how big an override does it give us a couple of years. This is a lot to try and figure out as a community. It's going to take a couple of years of lots of conversations. We'll probably need help. The last time is like in Vision Duxbury, right? We had MAPC came here and help us facilitate those conversations. And, you know, and again, we need to figure out how do we engage the community. Public forums is not good enough, right? We need to get out there and social media. So there's a lot of moving pieces that I think at the end of the day, this fiscal budget year, 26, has kind of brought to light. Yeah. And so we need to start doing something different starting fiscal year 27.
Yeah, so the issue about discussions about commercial tax base
Yes.
was something that I brought up last week.
Correct.
And I see that definitely more as a budget issue
Correct.
than as a planning zoning.
Yeah.
It's in my mind,
Okay.
it's far away from planning and zoning. It's a theoretical discussion about how we want to go forward as a town.
Okay.
Just eliminate it from C. I think we can just.
I think as long as
A.
I don't know what 1A describes, but as a select board, I mean, what do you think is that this is what I'm saying? I'm suggesting that we need to start thinking about.
I think A is broad enough that
Yeah.
it doesn't prevent us from talking about
Yeah.
our priorities
Right.
individually.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't need to be in the planning and zoning piece.
Yeah. And we don't need B. I want to delete B. I think we need to figure out, you know, again, one of the things we get charged with, oh, you give everybody 2.5%, right? This automatic pay rise, so to speak, or expenditure rise. We need to change that conversation. So I think that doesn't need to be in there. Again, comes back to 1A.
It wouldn't need to be in there because we wouldn't need to hear from those departments?
No, we will be hearing from the departments, right? But one of the feedback we get, right? Anytime you mention 2.5% increase, everybody thinks, rightly or wrongly, everybody says, oh, everybody's just going to, all the police department, everybody's going to ask for 2.5% because that's what they got.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's not zero-based budgeting, but is having, say, for instance, department heads, you know, they have 30 employees, right? Next year, the workload, 30 employees. So the only difference is going to be union contracts, the stipends, the change, yearly change, and or Article 4.
All right.
So I think we can really tighten up the conversations. And then if the department heads wants to go from 30 to 32, then that's a different conversation. Then they come towards us, right? I think Mary could help us with the
Timeline?
with the timeline and business the same as last year. If you want to talk with the department heads, we can ask them to come in, but I think it's about big changes that we need to talk about, right?
It'll help us own the process,
Yes.
especially for some of the bigger departments to have those conversations earlier in the year as opposed to
Correct.
in February.
Correct.
All right, so,
Yeah.
and Nancy, I'm relying on you to try to take this down, because I'm switching between documents up here. I had solicited, I knew Amy wouldn't be here, I had solicited her input. She had submitted some goals, and I've gone back and forth with her to ask if there, what she needs the most, in case, because we all can't get everything.
Right.
So the budget process was one of her top items, and I think it is for all of us.
Yes.
So for the purposes of the draft document, all right, so let me just go back to that. So I guess rather than number one being fiscal '27 budget, I think we could just say budget.
Yes.
Right, because it's going to be more than just fiscal '27.
Correct.
So part A would be, would include long-term budgeting, right?
Yes.
So would we call it sustainable or no? Is that a trigger word?
Because we're not, right now, we don't have a sustainable budget.
Right.
It's just,
So what would we call it for the purposes of being actionable? And we look at this in a month and say, what was it that
Yeah.
we said we were going to do again?
Well, I don't think, I think it's a good thing to work towards, to have
Yeah.
a sustainable budget.
Yeah.
operational.
That's it.
I don't want to, I mean, I think the way it's written right now, I think it gives us it allows some flexibility, but it also allows our professionals to give us a process and a timeline and recommendations.
Yep.
Whether,
Let's leave it, I think it's vague enough that we can, I think we understand what we're trying to achieve here, so,
All right, just so we're not limiting it to fiscal '27.
no.
So we'll just change the title
Yep.
from fiscal '27 budget to budget.
Yep.
We'll eliminate 1B, which is presentation
That's fine.
by departments.
That's too
Yeah.
detailed. We don't need
Then
that.
C, I think this is what we were just talking about,
Mhm.
the 5-year plan.
So this is, I dragged this over from last year. I cut and paste that from the Town Manager Act.
I'm required to do that anyway.
He's required to
It's
do
not a-
that.
it's not
So
a
he
goal,
does it
but
every
it's a
year anyway.
requirement.
Okay, so basically, we just, if it's part of his town manager act, we can delete it then.
As long, yeah.
All right.
And he did present it, in February,
Yeah.
Rainey?
Yeah, so it's not really
Yeah.
our goal.
So we
No.
don't need C, unless you want to just keep it in there as a continued
No.
thing.
Well, I'm trying to shorten the list so that if
So, yeah,
that's.
take it
yeah.
out.
Okay, so number one really is just going to have one thing in it, which is the A, a longer version of A. And Cindy, to your point, we can bring up the commercial tax base discussion,
Yep.
which is currently 2C,
Right.
bring that up to section 1.
How about changing C then, basically discussion
Regarding.
Revenue?
regarding the sources of revenue and expenditures for the town of Duxbury.
I agree,
That's fine.
as opposed to just,
Yes,
because
That's
there
fine.
are
That
other
includes
ways.
that.
yeah.
I just, as I said, it came up,
Yep.
during the override, and I think it's worth
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's-
involving the community in that discussion.
So, yeah, discussion regarding, discussion with the community with regards to both sides of the fiscal equation, the sources of revenue and our expenditures. Does that sound okay, Nancy?
Sure. So do you want to add that as a 1B?
Yeah, 1B, that becomes
All right.
1B.
Okay,
That's good.
all right. Great, moving right along. And I don't, Amy's other point had to do with what we have as section 5, so I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Cindy, you had comments as well that you circulated?
Yeah, I did, but it's because I hadn't read the
Okay.
end of my packet, so.
Gotcha. Okay. So that takes care of section 1, which is budget related.
Yep.
Section 2 This is planning and zoning. We just talked about hiring a planning director. What's your pleasure on keeping that in here as a goal? There's a lot of attention on this particular item. I'm happy to keep it in or take it out depending on what the
I
board
only put
cares
it
to
in to
see.
be blunt.
Yeah,
I
that-
think everything flows from that. I don't,
Yeah.
I could, it's more of a point rather than a goal. I think all of the other recommendations are perfectly appropriate. They carry from previous years, but I don't think we get to any of them without a full-time planner.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have A, B, and D then.
Is B include meeting with the planning board on the Envision Duxbury? Is that?
It doesn't. It's actually a little more.
Tactical, really.
Yeah, it's more tactical. It's really just getting an update, whether that's through the town manager or someone in planning, where we only have one black person in planning right now. But giving this board, given that we've articulated a real desire to move forward with the deliverables on Envision Duxbury, our prior planning director, so the last full-time planning director, put together a fantastic
Yes.
list, a spreadsheet.
Yes.
So it's really just an update to that spreadsheet and a presentation to us so that we, as the select board, can then provide such further direction as may be necessary in areas we think need to move forward perhaps more quickly than they're moving.
Yeah.
So
And coastal resiliency is part of Envision Duxbury, isn't it, right?
Yes.
it is, so we could merge B and D.
Yeah, with maybe just with special focus on sea level rise, climate resiliency.
There's a lot of people that feel
Yeah, you might want to keep
they want
that.
special
We'll keep that
focus.
separate? Okay, good. No problem.
All right, so under 2,
Yep.
we're keeping everything except C.
Correct.
Because C has merged now with Section 1.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
All
That's
right.
great.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
On 2A, instead of saying hire a qualified full-time planner, if you could change it to work toward hiring a qualified full-time planning director. I can't promise that we'll hire one.
Well, I think we want one.
We do, but I can't promise it because of the market. I
Well,
need
with-
to see what's out there, but if you tell me to hire somebody and I can't find somebody, then I've got a problem.
Wait, we put it this way. We've got to hire one, right? And so we need a conversation. If for some reason we can't find somebody because can't compete, then Jeannie, we need to have another look at what we're offering and find a way out of it. We can't
That's
go
what we-
ahead and do another year
already did that.
or 2 years or 3 years without a planning director because we're not paying people to come and work for us. There's something fundamentally wrong with what we're offering then if we can't hire anybody.
That's been our problem for the last 2 years.
I know, but I thought we'd addressed it with,
It might not be that.
Okay.
We don't know.
well, we need to find, okay.
We'll hear from Jeannie.
Okay,
We,
Jeannie.
we are seeing some new applicants in our
Okay.
candidate pool, which is promising.
All right.
And maybe what Rainey is trying to say is that when people seek jobs, it's not always about pay. So
Yeah.
we can't control those other factors. I think we've controlled the factor that we can control, and I'm hopeful that we will find a planner, and things are looking positive.
Right.
Okay.
I have no problems with making it more, fluid, to
I
work
agree.
towards hiring.
It's fine.
But
I appreciate it.
I just, no, I still think that's open-ended, right? And maybe the request is, if in 3 months' time you still don't have any applicants or we still having issues, then Rennie, you need to come before the select board to see what we can do to help you and Jeannie get competitive to be able to hire a planning director. We can't spend another year and say, well, I worked towards it, but I was unsuccessful. I mean, that's unacceptable. So what can we do to make it a little bit,
What if I find a great candidate that can only do 3 days a week?
well,
That's happened.
okay.
We'll
All
make it work.
What I'm hearing is, I'm sorry, I'm just getting really frustrated, okay? I'm really frustrated with this conversation. So what I'm hearing is, we just carry on as usual. We can't find one. Well, we can't find one, and it is what it is, right? That's sorry. That's what I'm hearing.
Can
I'm
I
hearing.
can I clarify?
Yes, please.
So, as Brian alluded,
Yeah.
he spoke about 2 planners ago. So what Brian was saying was we did have a full-time planner.
Right.
And we have problem solved around the absence of a full-time planner with 2 unbelievably qualified part-time planners.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I think that it's important to recognize that there are efforts that are being made to fill that gap as best we can until we do find a full-time planner. And there are some other rocks we can look under. There are some other options, but the planner we currently have is extraordinarily talented, and so was the one before. So I think we will continue to problem solve around that, but I do expect that we will have a full-time planner sooner rather than later, given the efforts that we've already made. But I can't promise it. But
No, I know we can't promise it, but maybe what I'm asking for is if we're having difficulty, let's not wait until this time next year to have a conversation around. Well, we couldn't get one because of X, Y, and Z. Can we maybe have just a regular check-in or something like that, just to see what we
Well,
could
that would be
do?
the action plan, right? So this is the goals, and then we have an action plan about how to go about doing that.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
to
I mean, I
Fernando's.
agree with you.
Go ahead, Mike.
You probably have a good idea.
Sorry, but Brian,
I think
help
me and Brian had a
us
little-
out.
No,
Yes,
so
You guys got it.
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to the hard market
Yes.
that we're in.
Correct.
But I'm also very sensitive to the fact that despite the terrific efforts that you've made to backstop in the meantime, there's a lot of things that our boards and committees haven't been able to do that we want them to do, we as a community and we as a board. So I'm inclined to, I support you on leaving this in to hire a qualified full-time planner. However, we can't force you to do something that simply, you can't force somebody to come and work here.
That's my point.
That would have been solved already. But we can't just keep saying, well, we're going to try. But we're going to have a change in the pay scale starting July 1.
Right.
So what if we have a check-in? Well, we see you every week, so we'll have
Yeah.
check-ins. But can we have something on the agenda for August where we'll be a month into the new fiscal year, see where that's left us in terms of candidates if we haven't brought somebody on board already? Because presumably by then, 4 weeks into the new fiscal year, we'll have a sense as to who's out there. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that the worst thing you can do for a vacancy is hire the wrong person,
Yeah.
right?
No,
So we've all been there.
Yes.
No particular office in mind right now, but I mean, we've all had circumstances where, you're frustrated and anxious to hire somebody, and it's just not the right fit for whatever reason. So we want the right person.
Right, we want the right person, and I think the message is come to us and see what we can do to help. Maybe there's nothing we can do, but come to the select board and see what we can do to help, please.
Right. All right. So we'll leave it in?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. With the
Oh, by
asterisk.
the way, my point wasn't to remove it, because I'm still going to try and do it.
Yeah.
I know you worked
It's
on
just
it.
to edit
Yeah,
the language.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that leaves us in number 2 with A, the planner, B, the comprehensive plan check-in, C is moved now to section A, and D, we're going to leave as its own item, right?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
So what do you want to do with your preface here? At least 3 of the following goals shall be completed.
Oh, so we'll just say all,
Yeah.
because now it's 3.
Yep.
And we'll put an asterisk next to A,
Yes.
knowing that you can't force somebody to
Correct.
take the job. Because if you could, we would have done it already. All right, so that moves us into public health, number 3. And this is PFAS,
Yeah.
a must-have, obviously.
Yep.
I think this was last year's goal, right?
Yep.
By the way, this is going to happen whether it's a goal or not. We're just
Yeah,
going to
that's
do it.
fine.
Yep.
And we will have I don't have my note from last meeting, but we will have a check-in, when was it? To see how our new rates have affected consumption.
All right.
We're going to do that in the summer sometime? I forget what we said.
We will know by August,
But
right, when they...
I think that's right.
when they go to read the meters again?
Yeah, for this board to have an update as to what
August.
consumption looks like.
Ish.
Um,
August, September.
It's going,
August, September, because the
Yeah.
bills will be, meters will be read in July, bills will go out in August.
yeah.
All right, 'cause-
And then collections will be, the due date will be September, so.
And that's a
Well,
critical component of us determining what the long-term strategy is, because if you leave it in the ground, we don't have to build expensive infrastructure.
Correct, but I actually, I'm sorry. So what we're talking about with the transition to quarterly billing is we will have more frequent access to that consumption data. The first period with which the new rates will apply is going to be the summertime usage.
Right.
And although I anticipate that we're going to start to see some conservation, I don't think that we're really going to see full summertime conservation until next year, right?
Right.
So behaviors change sometimes slowly.
Sure.
Yep.
So we will look at the impact after the first quarterly billing, and we will also look at the impact after the second quarterly billing to see what kind of a trend or trajectory we are heading towards. But we will have more frequent access to be able to do that, which is good.
Right, but I think that this board wants to
Yep.
see that as
Right.
well.
Yep, of course. No worries.
Okay, awesome. Beach and recreation. So we have two components here. Mike, I think you were B.
Yeah, and I think I helped, worked with Rainey last year on drafting A.
Okay.
And B, I would only, I can take out to advance their approach or something more vague. I don't know if things have changed since May of 2024. Something, I want to focus on what, as a group jointly, we think is the right approach,
Right.
their
I know what
approach.
you're talking, what you mean.
So I said to advance multi-phase approach is set forth by DRC's fact sheet of May 8th of 2024. We never acted on
Oh, you're
that.
talking about open fields, I'm still working on the
Yep.
beach,
Yeah.
okay.
So B, more along the lines of like to advance DRC's approach, or something like that.
Or even make it even vaguer, because I'm not, I read through it and I don't fully understand the pros and cons and actually what can we do as a community.
Right.
But maybe it's more about continued conversations to see what we can
Yeah.
do with regards to open field
Yeah.
spaces.
And the point is to make this a priority and
Yeah.
focus on it,
Yeah.
And to get something done.
To get something done and yeah, or come to some endpoint, right?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
So it doesn't need to be as specific as that.
Yeah. So continued discussions with school committee, town recreation department, and Duxbury Recreational Collaborative?
Yep.
Yeah, I
We
would,
can end it at collaborative, just a period after collaborative.
Oh, collaborative. Yep, exactly.
I agree with that, but I would, are you taking out prioritize open field spaces?
No.
I just, we're talking about looking at the budget, and I think it's Fernando that said something, well, maybe we need to, cut the library or cut the senior center or whatever.
By the way,
I- no,
anybody
no, no.
listening, I didn't say that. We need a conversation
A
with,
conversation.
with the community.
I'm sorry, but exactly. No,
Yes,
I
right.
understand, exactly, I do. But saying that sort of stuff, having that conversation about the library and the
Right.
senior center, but then we're going to prioritize open field. It's, it's all part of the same conversation, right? I mean, I don't want to say, oh, we're going to prioritize open field spaces over anything else at this point, when we're in a fiscal,
Because it is a cost discussion, isn't it?
yes.
So it needs to go into, maybe it's part of,
It's a cost, but so is the beach and so is everything else. It's part of recreation. I think it's in a good place where it is. But I do think, I understand what Cindy's saying, but I think there's a lot of folks in town that pay a substantial amount of taxes that have their children playing on inadequate fields.
right.
And there's a lot of people that use the senior center, and there's a lot of people that
Yeah,
use the
it's all part of
library,
the-
and
Yeah.
I mean,
It's all part of the big picture. I just
Yeah.
wanted to get it up on the,
yeah.
on the priority list too.
Or basically just continue, if that's going to be prioritize open field spaces, let's just say continue conversations, right?
I would like to prioritize open field spaces.
It'll also be included in in the comprehensive plan update as well, because open space and recreation is a component of that. So it won't get lost. But I hear what you're saying.
We missed this. I think we've already missed some time and opportunity to address this. It's sat on a shelf for a long time, and you know we do things. We turf fields. We fix things, but they've been in, and they were here in May, and I'd like to get them back. I'd like to get the right people in the room with the school department and maybe CPC, and look at ways we can advance this. It's a huge slice of our population, and I think we need to get them in the room.
How is it going to read? If it,
The only thing I was going to delete was everything after collaborative, because it was just very specific.
and we don't, I mean, I haven't seen the DRC spec sheet.
They were here last May.
Yeah, it was,
But I mean, I wouldn't want to put it into my goal because I haven't seen it.
Right, that's why I deleted it.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very specific, it might be dated.
So can you describe what you mean by prioritize? What would be the actionable items on something like that?
Well, they're, and I don't want to speak for them, but it would be improving our fields in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's imperative that we do. I mean, if we're asking people to increase their tax base, and there is this large population that is utilizing our fields, if they're going back and they're bringing their children to fields that have holes that are with brown or with tipping goalposts, or simply cannot be played on because they are unsafe, it is a hard ask of large amounts of our population to ask them for increases in taxes.
Yeah.
So I think it's both there's a lot of reasons this should be prioritized.
Well, I
I think it's the word prioritize. Yeah, we need to understand what's going on with our open field spaces, right? And we need a joint conversation
I
to
agree.
see what actions we can take. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Is that a? So I think the word prioritize means open space in front of
Everything
library,
else.
in front of everything, right? Maybe
And the schools.
and the schools, right? So understand the challenges we face with open field spaces. Understand the challenges we face with open field spaces.
I like that.
Meet jointly with the school committee, town recreation department, CPC, and Duxbury Recreational Collaborative. How about that?
That sounds great.
All right. Nancy, did you happen to get that one? It's an important one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
very much. And
Great.
Thank you for saying that.
So we'll change that to both of these will be completed, A and B.
The only thing with beach reservation is that there's a cost associated with this, and right now with basically 5A, I don't know if we can, well, actually, isn't this what we're already doing?
We did this last year.
We did this last year.
Yeah. And we
I
advanced.
thought that, sorry, I was looking in there I thought it said about, what they call it, escorting. We can't do escorting.
No.
Escorting's off the table because we don't have the people to do escorting. But it sounds like we're doing this anyway, right, Mike? We just continue?
It's my understanding, and I think the proof was in the pudding, that we're all, including DBR
Yep.
and our rec department and Save Duxbury Beach, and everybody are working together to advance overstand access and beach access in general.
Right.
So
So-
we're all working in a positive direction.
Yeah. So why don't we just say, continue working with the Duxbury Beach Reservation to help implement?
Yeah.
Continue working.
Sure.
That sounds great.
Okay?
It's the same, yeah, it's the same language as last year.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Continue working. All right.
The idea being getting as many folks out there as possible.
Yep. Within the resources that we
Yeah,
have.
exactly, yeah. All right.
Oh, I'm so happy to see 5A.
So now we're on to 5. This is governance administration. 5A, prepare town meeting article for 2026 annual town meeting to move the date of our annual town meeting from March to May, commencing with the 2027 annual town meeting. We all still good with that?
Can we maybe put an option in there? Because if there's a special town meeting in June, we
Yeah.
could always put that article in the special town meeting.
I think you might want the broader audience in
Yeah.
March, because they'll look at it as kind of sneaky.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because it wouldn't be effective until 27 anyway, so.
okay. All right, no, well,
We
that's
can-
fine. I don't want to be sneaky.
Or you could just take ATM out of that sentence twice.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, we want to have some goalposts, don't we?
Well, it would be any town meeting, so
Yeah.
if there were a special in 26 or whenever.
Yeah,
I mean, it's whatever town meeting you have for 26, you're going
Yeah.
to attempt it. You may attempt it twice, who knows?
right. Prepare a town meeting article to move the date of our annual town meeting from March to May.
Well, if we get a resounding no at annual town meeting in 26, I can't see us bringing it back at a special later that year,
No.
right? So I think
remember
we
it
do
going
need
the other
to,
way.
I think we need to have it for the full attendance at ATM, annual town meeting.
What's that?
If you run it in June, you're going to have a different audience than you will in March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I, for one, would prefer a day in March over a day in June or
May. I think that the reason for it, Mike, is actually.
I know, functionally, I
Yes.
get
It's
why.
functionally,
It's the budget.
it's the budget process. We
Yeah.
we're one of the, I think there's 2 towns or 3 towns that have it so early, right? And it gives the school administration, it gives Mary McKinnon, it gives everybody more time and space.
What about splitting off the budget from the other articles and doing separate town meetings? We did end up doing it anyway.
Easy enough to do. Done that in a lot of communities.
Yeah, and just have a budget day and
We used to do, most communities do planning and zoning articles in the fall.
because we
They do-
certainly get bogged down with all these other.
They do the budgetary stuff, the money articles in the spring.
Right.
It's not uncommon.
We end up doing it anyway.
Well, I'd like to hear from the public, I think.
I agree, I'm just throwing,
Yeah. Okay.
maybe a study, maybe we make this a little broader to discuss town meeting article, to discuss future town meetings, something along those
I
lines.
think Nancy has raised her hand.
I just wanted to add something to A, since our town elections are related to our town meeting.
That needs to move as well.
Currently, it's currently our town meeting, our bylaws, is the second Saturday.
Correct.
of March, with the town elections occurring 2 weeks after.
This would be amending the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
This
so
is-
basically.
This is an amendment to the bylaws.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
it,
it
the
is.
Article 12 back in 2016 moved that as well.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yep.
It's an amendment to the general bylaws is what
Correct.
this is.
Yes, yep.
So what's our pleasure on 5A? Want to wordsmith it a bit?
Maybe discuss.
Uh,
I know, sorry, Fernando, I know you like
le-
this.
Leave it the way it is.
It's-
Okay.
We can always reject it.
You can always reject it. At some point, we'll have to vote on it
Yeah.
as, we'll
Yeah.
talk about it. So just leave it as it is.
All right, and that brings us to the last one, 5B, employee engagement to attain better understanding of internal challenges and department equity, which is just a high-level way of saying we want to get to the root of why morale is not as great as it could be. And how we get a better, despite all the great efforts that are going on already, how we can make the municipal working environment even better.
Yeah. So basically, a better understanding of internal and external challenges and department equity. It just seems to imply,
Fairness, basically.
yeah, it seems
It's
to
still
imply.
merit-based, has to be.
Yeah, it just seems to be, we're identifying a problem that we don't know that if we have
Oh, we do.
from, okay, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Can we add external challenge? Are we okay with that?
Internal
And external challenges.
External
Sure. I
challenges.
mean, that's a real
That's
concern
a
as
real
well.
thing.
Any thoughts on that, Mike? Okay.
It's fine with me.
All right.
Can I
Yeah.
So,
In just reading the language of that, it says a possible anonymous departmental survey?
No.
No, it's not
No.
on the new sheet.
Oh,
No.
okay, got it.
That might have
Okay,
been an
then
earlier
scrap it.
version.
No, wait, scrap that one.
Thank you.
Scrap it.
Thank you.
And that was the other comment that Amy had. It had to do with a survey. But
Right.
that's more of an action item, so if we
Right.
determine that's a necessary component of this better understanding, then
Yep.
that's something we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Nancy, any questions on all those edits? I know there was a lot.
No, because I can always go back and listen.
Okay.
But I have.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think we can approve as amended.
I was just going to ask for a
Oh, sure.
motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent.
Well done. We now move on to discussion and Select Board's adoption of a statement in support of employees and volunteers. This is a good segue from our last discussion. A moment ago, we've heard that morale at Town Hall, for a variety of reasons,
Right.
is unfortunately lacking, despite efforts from a number of people to make it as good as possible. There have been some external forces as well, not the least of which has been a bag of goodies left on multiple occasions at Town Hall. And the purpose of bringing this up is for us, as the chief elected officials of the town, to endorse and support our fantastic volunteers and employees, because it's not just the employees, it's also volunteers that are affected.
Exactly.
And let them know we're standing behind them, and that we repudiate the external forces or actions, the incivility that a number of people have had to endure through, well, I can just read the statement.
Yeah, I think it's
And we
well
can
written.
debate how we want to modify it,
Yep.
if at all. So this is the Select Board statement in support of employees and volunteers. I'm reading this as a draft, dated today. As the chief elected officials and executive officers of the town of Duxbury, and as individuals who care deeply about our community, we stand in full support of the talented and dedicated people, employees and volunteers, who provide outstanding municipal services and make Duxbury such a fantastic place to live and work. We recognize that times are challenging, both locally and nationally. Public discourse is more important than ever and relies on contributions from a wide range of perspectives. Decisions concerning local services and expenses involve value judgments and trade-offs. We encourage input, both in support and opposition, so well-informed decisions can be made. This process, however, relies on civility. The late Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor noted that civility is hard to codify or legislate, but you know it when you see it. It's possible to disagree without being disagreeable. Regrettably, Duxbury's employees and volunteers have been subject to disparaging and abusive emails, voicemails, social media posts, and other communications. Large bags of feces have been left at Town Hall. This behavior is unacceptable and has no place in a community that prides itself on civic engagement and mutual respect. Disagreement is natural and passionate debate is welcome, but personal attacks, harassment, and intimidation undermine the very foundation of a strong community. Throughout Duxbury's long history, our community has weathered hardships. The resilience of our people has been a defining trait since our incorporation in 1637, and that same spirit will see us through today's challenges. We continue to live, work, and serve together long after current difficulties have been resolved or will be resolved. This is why we must recommit to the principles of mutual respect and civil discourse. The golden rule, to treat others as we would like to be treated, should guide us, especially during difficult times. As members of the Select Board, we stand in full support of our valued employees and volunteers. Your dedication is vital to our town, and we sincerely appreciate all that you do for our community.
That is nicely said. My only suggestion is to delete large bags of feces have been left at Town Hall.
Okay?
Just delete that sentence. This is really good. And thank you, Brian, for putting this together.
Sure.
I agree with that deletion.
I had some initial questions about the sentence about the golden rule and ended up going down a rabbit hole of looking up different religions and the golden rule.
Oh, church and state.
I might suggest taking it out. I think what we said, recommit to principles of mutual respect and civil discourse, and then maybe comma, treating others as we would like to be treated.
Sure.
Yeah. That's very much, we commit to principles of mutual respect and civil discourse.
I mean, not that I personally have anything against the.
Actually, what you can do is just delete the golden rule, right? And just capitalize the two, to treat others as we would like to be treated.
And get rid of the hyphen.
Yeah, get rid of the hyphen.
All right. So Nancy, I'm looking to you again.
Okay.
So we'll remove the sentence about dog leavings, and we will modify the last sentence of the penultimate paragraph.
Take out the golden rule.
Yeah, capital T, and to treat others as we would like to be treated.
This should guide us, especially, this should guide us, especially during difficult
I'm
times.
sure she can make that
Or
into
just
a
remove
sentence.
Yeah, make that a
Yeah.
sentence.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right. Any other comments or thoughts?
No, it was excellent.
Really
All
good.
right. May I
Very
have a
nice.
motion?
Thank you.
I move to approve the amended Select Board statement in support of employees and volunteers, April 7th, 2025.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
All right, nice.
The ayes have it, the motion carries. And thank you to our volunteers and employees. We really appreciate what you do and understand it's been very difficult, and we'll get through this together. Jeannie, anything to add while we're still on this before we move to the next item?
No, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. All right. Why don't we move on to the town manager's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple updates for you. The first is with regard to the Duxbury Beach, the avian update. I was notified today that more piping plovers are arriving on the beach, and the staff have observed the early comers setting up and defending territories. Some are starting to show signs of nesting behavior. As a reminder, symbolic fencing has been installed along the entire beach, stretch of the beach on the upper dune. Areas behind the symbolic fencing represent closed areas where there is no public access. The closed area also extends to the backside of the dune up to Gurnett Road, where the post and cable fencing is located. Dog regulations are in effect from April 1st to September 15th. Leashed dogs are allowed on Duxbury Beach, and areas open to dogs are along Gurnett Road and from Powder Point Bridge south on the Oceanside and Bayside beaches. No dog signs are posted at pedestrian pathways to the beach north of Powder Point Bridge to designate where dogs are not allowed. With regard to the MBTA zoning case, I sent a note to the board earlier letting you know that the case has been filed, the complaint has been filed. It came to me late Friday afternoon, and along with the complaint that you received today are the motion for the preliminary injunction, the motion for the short order of notice for the expedited hearing, and memorandum of law, all of which have been filed with Plymouth Superior Court and are now public records. I would caution you that if you do print off the verified complaint, it comes in at over 270 pages, so be careful on that one.
Randy, just before you move on to the next thing on
I'm
this.
not done with that
Oh, okay,
part.
go right ahead.
Yep. And I had also asked Greg, who was helping us, I wanted to make sure that we were okay getting it out to everybody, so I sent it to the board, I sent it to the press, and then I also asked if he had any idea when the court might be reviewing it, because since, as they know, the court's action could determine whether or not we have a special town meeting, to which he replied, hopefully that they will, he doesn't know when the court will schedule a hearing, but hopefully he will know by the end of the week, and he will keep us posted, and I will do the same for you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify what this is all about, at Open Forum, I had mentioned what the MBTA Communities Working Group is doing. This is a parallel track where the town, based upon a determination by the state auditor, separate issue from what the SJC looked at, that this is an unfunded mandate, MBTA Communities, an unfunded mandate. The way that would apply is if a Superior Court judge says you don't have to comply because it's not a, it's an unfunded mandate. So in order to apply for the benefit of that potential order, we have to file a lawsuit, a formal lawsuit in Plymouth Superior Court to ask a judge to basically adopt the legal argument of the state auditor. And that's something we will hear from in due course, but in the meantime, we'll continue to proceed with the MBTA Communities. That's another question. If we have a lawsuit, why do we have to continue? The answer is because we might not get what we want from the court,
Exactly.
so we need to be prepared.
Yep.
So that's a great update and a great development, Rainey. Thank you.
Two other quick things. I received notification this week from the governor that the town's fire department has received a grant award for firefighter safety equipment in the amount of $9,369. And then I also received notification from the lieutenant governor that we were awarded $44,000 in the Community Compact Cabinet's Information Technology Grant Program for cybersecurity. So we're pleased to receive notification of both of those.
Excellent.
And that
And
is my
in
update.
the not-too-distant future, we'll have a meeting with the town's IT director about cybersecurity
In executive session, yes.
in executive yes. Yeah. I think it's important for this board to have an appreciation, because we do so much online. Necessarily, it's convenience, but we want to make sure that we're clear on how we protect the information that's there.
And that's my report.
Excellent.
Brian, may I ask a question? I don't know if any other board members have questions too, but, or just a point. And I know, Rainey, you're aware of this. In addition to what's going on out at the beach that you mentioned, a number of volunteers from Save Duxbury Beach and Duxbury Beach Reservation spent a considerable amount of time on Wednesday and Saturday this past week installing deterrents on the second crossover. And I think the thousands of sticks with flags on them and also pallets. I know that a lot of our residents took part in that, and it's greatly appreciated. It's nice to see folks working together for good purpose in these early cold days of March when only volunteers and plovers seem to want to be on the beach. So
More volunteers than plovers right now.
very much appreciate their concerted effort.
Thank you for
Likewise,
mentioning that.
the rest of us echo that for sure, especially if we can get on the beach a little early, potentially. All right, one-day liquor license.
Yeah, the Duxbury Music Festival Spring Preview at South Shore Conservatory. I move that Ms. Audrey Shore, as representative of the South Shore Conservatory, is granted a one-day wine and malt license for the Duxbury Music Festival Spring Preview concert to be held at the South Shore Conservatory Ellison Center for the Arts, 64 St. George Street, on Sunday, April 13th, 2025, from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing
No.
none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Minutes. We have executive session minutes from March 17th, 2025.
I move to approve those minutes.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Additions, corrections, deletions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I didn't have the motion. There's no motion there. Sorry.
Oh, I need to abstain from the open session.
Okay, that'll be the next one. Open session minutes from March 31st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed, abstentions, we have 301. All right. Announcements.
Yeah, recreational shellfish. License applications are available on the town's website under online payments. The current season expires 3/31/2025. Commercial shellfish license applications. Commercial shellfish license applications will be available April 1st in the Select Board's office in Old Town Hall. You can apply only during the month of April, and applicants must be a Duxbury resident and have a Massachusetts commercial fisherman's permit showing endorsed shellfish. For more information, please contact the Select Board's office at 781-934-1100, extension 5402. 2025 dog licenses are available. Reminder, all dogs over the age of 6 months must be licensed annually. There will be a late fee in the amount of $25 assessed for each unlicensed dog as of April 1st. 2025 beach and transfer station stickers. New 2025 beach and transfer station stickers effective April 1st, 2025, March 31st, 2026 are available to purchase. For more information, go to the town's website at www.town.duxbury.ma.us under the Services tab on the home page. Open Space and Recreation Plan Public Forum. Please join the Open Space Committee and the Conservation Department for a public forum on Wednesday, April 16th at 7 p.m. to collect community input on the Open Space and Recreation Plan. The work group has drafted a set of goals and strategies that reflect the results we received from almost 1,800 survey respondents. The goals and strategies will shape the use of our town's open space and recreation areas. The meeting will be held in a large classroom at the Duxbury Senior Centre. We look forward to seeing you there! For further information, please refer to the Open Space Committee website, www.town.duxbury.ma.us/open space-committee. The next scheduled Select Board meeting will be Monday, April 14th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m.
Well done.
I had one more thing I forgot in
Yeah.
my manager's report. I made a note, but I forgot to put it in there. I had a email exchange today with Keith Hickey, my counterpart over in Kingston, regarding the creation of a
District?
Veterans Agent District. He has the document now, and he's looking at it, so he'll get back to me.
Okay.
I just wanted to
Excellent.
give you that update.
Well, that's good news.
Little
Thank you.
progress report there. Yeah.
And we thank, again, Mike Thorpe, the former Veterans Agent, who's stepped back into the breach to handle things while the office is vacant.
Correct, yes, thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We are adjourned.